A significant foreign policy challenge, what is looking very much like the beginnings of all-out war in the Middle East. After several deadly days of Palestinian-fired rockets, Israeli counter-airstrikes, Israel now says its ground forces have begun attacking Gaza. That would mark a major escalation of this conflict. They're a few hours into it. There are also reports of rockets launched toward Israel the other direction from Lebanon. And fighting between Arab and Jewish mobs on the streets of Israeli cities continues as well. This afternoon, the president was asked how the White House intends to respond.
Our intelligence community, the Defense Department, as well as the State Department, have been in contact with all of their counterparts in not only in Israel, but in the region. The question is how we get to a point where they get to a point where there is a significant reduction in the attacks, particularly the rocket attacks.
General McCaffrey, take us overseas, and let's start this topic by quoting from Jonathan Lemire's employer, the Associated Press. Quote, the 4-day burst of violence has pushed Israel into uncharted territory, dealing with the most intense fighting it has ever had with Hamas, while simultaneously coping with the worst Jewish-Arab violence inside Israel in decades. General, ground operations are underway tonight, but the IDF says none of their troops have passed into Gaza. So that means artillery to me. I'm curious about what it means to you. And for a time there today, as you know, projectiles, worst case scenario, were coming in from the northern border and the southern border simultaneously. Are we looking at a tipping point here?
Well, we may well be. It's extraordinarily dangerous. This is possibly the fourth war between the Israelis and Hamas in Gaza since Hamas took over from the PLO. Very tricky situation. Obviously, the political background is what's more important. But right now, the IDF has gone in and struck more than 350 targets in Israel. There are hundreds of Palestinian casualties. The Hamas have fired a couple of thousand rockets at Israel. They've got a lot more range. Their biggest rocket will go 200 kilometers. So Tel Aviv is under attack for the first time. And the violence inside Israel, people forget 20% of the population of Israel is Arab, and that doesn't include those without Israeli passports in East Jerusalem or elsewhere who just have residency. So this is a very bad situation. Israelis now have 3 brigades mobilized. If they go into Gaza, a couple of million Palestinians packed in urban areas. They're right now using tank and artillery fire. Then we'll see casualties skyrocket to include with the Israelis. I don't think the Israelis have a choice. Their existential life in the Middle East is at stake in these wars.
General, I think it's fair to say the Israelis have been surprised at the depth of the arsenal, these rockets and missiles coming at them out of Gaza, their range and their force. But we've also been watching these nonstop, almost video game night video images of the Iron Dome protection system over Israel. And I know you've watched this mature and develop over the years. It is remarkable science.
Yeah, it is. It's basically a 3-layer defense. But again, it's not foolproof. These missiles do get through. The Israelis are taking civilian casualties. It's been enormously disruptive to the entire economic life of Israel. The main airport in Israel is now closed. So we're going to see the Israelis take any measures required to stop the attack on their population. And these missiles are now heading as far south as southern Israel. And as you already mentioned, there were 3 missiles fired out of southern Lebanon, probably by Palestinians. But it would be an unfolding tragedy if we saw again Lebanese factions take part in the fighting. So we're on the edge now of a real Armageddon if there isn't some kind of a political backing off of the situation. But look at the heart of it. There was a great op-ed today in the New York Times on the right of return. And essentially, that's what is at stake. Do the Palestinians return to Israel, reclaim their villages, their homes? Or, from the Israeli perspective, it would be the end of the Jewish population. So this is a fight with zero-sum stakes.
John Lemire, you heard the general. How big does this loom at the Biden White House?
It looms significantly, Brian, and growing by the day. We've heard the president offer sort of reassuring messages in recent days, touting his conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and those that he and his top advisors, State Department and elsewhere, have had with a number of the leaders in the region, with Israel, with the Palestinians, but also key regional allies like Egypt that have relationships with Hamas that may have some influence there. But despite what the president said about 48 hours ago that he believed the situation was improving, that is clearly not the case. It was just so well described there. The violence has only increased, the stakes only higher, and the real danger of this tipping into something truly catastrophic grows by the hour. So there's been increasing pressure on the White House to play a bigger role. They do have an envoy who has now arrived in the region. Israel is not a country where the U.S. has a new ambassador just yet, though there's certainly career diplomats on the ground. The U.S. also did not support the UN security resolution about the situation there. So this is something that the president and his team are watching closely, because there is a chance, of course, this could erupt into an all-out war, which, of course, no one wants. And we should see, I believe, the administration taking more aggressive steps in the coming days, trying to pressure more. The president was asked today if Prime Minister Netanyahu had done enough to stop the violence. He certainly said Israel has a right to defend itself, but expect the pressure from the White House to grow to try to de-escalate the situation.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.